Hey, Dan here, and this might be a bit of a long one. One of your fellow ENFPs asked a question about whether or not ENFPs can essentially stay in one place. Andrew posted this on my video about changing locations or moving if you're not happy where you are. And he says, I'm interested to hear your brief thoughts, ENFP never going to be brief, on whether ENFPs are really even able to settle down or not, or whether we have an innate, unshakable urge to move on no matter where we live. Andrew grew up in South Michigan and has been living in Seoul, Korea for 3 years doing a master's degree. And he says he loves it. It's been fun, never a dull moment, lots of friends, and still some strong cultural differences, though, that has him pondering his future. I can imagine, as a guy from Michigan, that you haven't exactly integrated in Korea. No surprise there. It's a pretty closed off culture from my understanding. So is it possible for an ENFP to fit in, or is it simply in their nature to constantly desire a change of environment? Do you think this is an ENFP thing or more of an anxiety thing? I'm just asking because I've never really had the moment in my life where I said, oh, I'm with people that definitely inspire me and match me and I want to stay here. It's been mostly pros and cons of this or that, nothing really convincing. I'm asking if ENFPs are destined to pretty much change what they're doing every few years for the rest of their lives, or if this is more of a thing where we do this only when we dislike our current situation. So for those of you who don't know my own story, I left Canada in 2012. I moved to Costa Rica. From there, I moved to New York and then was living over in Europe since then in a bunch of different countries, eventually settling here in Prague. And when I first was traveling, so I was living places maybe for 2 or 3 months at a time, bouncing around, there was a ton of novelty and excitement, right? You're somewhere new. Probably didn't hurt that I was a single writer, you know, traveling around as well. There was a lot of variety, novelty, and fun in my life, right? And then eventually I ended up settling in Hamburg, Germany for about a year, and then another time in Prague, where I've been for 4 years now. And I've noticed some big differences. So if you haven't yet checked out my video on human needs psychology, definitely add that to your watch later and catch it maybe after this video. It takes about 20-30 minutes depending on what speed you watch the video at. But essentially I break down that there are 6 psychological needs people have, and 2 of the main ones that are really important are certainty and uncertainty. And some people, I'm sure you know a lot of them, have a really high need for certainty or consistency in their lives, right? Other people, like most of us ENFPs, we have a high need for variety and uncertainty. We like that novelty, we like change. And what it ultimately comes down to is, how do you meet that change? And what it ultimately comes down to is, how do you actually meet that need for change or variety? It doesn't necessarily have to even be change, keep in mind. It's a need for novelty, newness, for stimulation. So going back to when I was first moving in Europe and I was traveling a lot more, I was constantly being challenged. I had to find new housing, I had to pick up little bits of languages, I had to figure out bank accounts and everything else every time I moved somewhere new. That was a challenge, and that kept me very stimulated. How my business went during that time? Pros and cons. Really, when I look at the places when I was somewhere for a longer period of time and also in a relationship, my business tended to go up. When I was moving around for a couple months here and there and had a lot of other stimulation, it seemed like I didn't challenge myself nearly as much in my business. It was almost like when my life, in terms of where I lived in relationships, was more stable, I met that need for variety by really pushing myself in my business. Whereas when my life was all over the place and fun and exciting, not in a bad way, I tended to not have as much of that drive within my business. And so put another way, you could look at it this way, that when I had a little less uncertainty and variety in my normal life, I found other outlets. Some people do this with like extreme sports or rock climbing or going to all kinds of personal development events. For me, I've never really got into physical extreme sports. I would love to, I just haven't really. So for me, it was often like the business, and that's where I would put my energy into, and that would allow me to meet that need for variety by doing new things. Now, that doesn't go on forever. One thing I've started doing in the last year is throwing in-person events, and one reason I've done this is for you guys. There's a lot of benefits to meeting in person and working together, but another reason is for me, that it gives me some variety. It's a new challenge. Last year, I did events in Mexico, Spain, and here in Prague, and each one required me to figure out, like, where do we host this? Where do I take people for dinners? You know, figure out the logistics of everything and all that. And that was good. It met my need for variety. I could have just kept going with my business sort of as is, 100% based online essentially, and not added that extra stress to my life. But I wanted that stress. I wanted that challenge and that variety. And so something that I think we can never get away from as ENFPs is a need for variety, a need for challenge. But let's be honest, that's most actualized humans. We want more novelty, stimulation, challenge. It's not like there's many people in life who live a totally fulfilled life and they're just like, I'm happy doing the exact same thing every day. Most interesting people are that way because they want to be challenged and they want to always be growing. So the question really is how can you set up your life so that you can be productive, have a healthy relationship, and all this sort of stuff, while also meeting your need for excitement and having lots of variety. Now I got to give a little self-promo here. If you aren't yet a subscriber on my email list, do check out my life design approach. It's a 9-part email series. I talk about when I used to live all across Europe. I share some pretty inappropriate stories that I think you'll enjoy that are conveying important lessons in life. And ultimately, I'm talking about how to actually take charge and design your life. So for me, the way that looks in the long run is to have 2 to 3 places that I live. So somewhere like Prague, it will likely stay Prague, that I live for say 6 to 8 months of the year. It's my main home. Then somewhere like a Barcelona or a Lisbon that's more sunny, I can go there in the winter for 3 months, but also still have a community and have a place I feel comfortable. And then a month or 2, I think my months are adding up to like 13 or 14 here, but a couple months a year of more like adventure travel as well, going somewhere I've never been and being really challenged and stimulated. For me, that's what I think my ideal balance will end up being. It will be different for everyone, right? One thing I work on doing is trying to be proactive with adding elements to my life that will keep it interesting, especially during winter. Wintertime here in Prague, you know, it's beautiful in many ways, but it's still winter. The city slows down. There's a lot less people usually who are visiting, like other entrepreneurs who often come here just for the summer. And there's a little bit less going on. And I find that combined with the change in weather, I usually lose some energy. And so what I've tried to do like this year is I added another co-working space I go to, aside from the usual one, that is in the center of the city, right in the tourist hub. I have to walk right through Old Town Square to get there. It's not in some ways an ideal location, but the reason I joined it is it actually takes me somewhere new for the day. It's a different feeling. It's like a 20-minute, roughly, commute, if you will, to get there. I walk through the old, beautiful part of the city, and that adds some variety for me, right? That's not gonna last forever. If I keep going to the same co-working space for 5 years, it's gonna become very boring, right? But for now, it added that variety. So I actually have a friend visiting right now, and in a few weeks, my brother will be visiting, and this isn't normal in the winter. It's actually worked out really well, but it's other ways to add some more variety. What I used to find myself doing in the winters, and I still occasionally do this now, is I'll just pull up like my travel app and just be looking for something. You know, I need to escape, I need to have a vacation, I need that novelty mat. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like I found that every winter now I usually go away for at least a month. That definitely does help with having that variety, but it's not necessarily the best way to always meet variety of just that feeling like I need to escape. And so what I've been doing more and more is trying to look for a way to balance that out. Not that I ever plan to stop traveling or stop going away in the winter. As I told you, my ultimate plan is to do at least like 3 months every winter somewhere else. But that there should also be other ways to meet your needs, right? If you're always just looking for the easy escape, like let's say you're in a long-term relationship and it starts to lose some of its novelty, your initial feeling should not be like, end the relationship. It should be like, how can I meet my need for novelty in a healthier way? Now, maybe that's within the relationship, like you go buy some costumes, you try some new things, or maybe it's just meeting your need for variety in other parts of your life, right? With a lot of our needs, it's not that we have to meet the need for, say, variety in every single area of our life. It's that overall we need to be getting a good dose of variety. So thinking a little more big picture on that is like, okay, what are some healthy ways I can meet my need for variety that also contribute to my longer term goals and are good for me? If you think in that way, it may enable you to have a lot more stability in terms of the basic things in life, like where you live or your relationship. And what I've learned and been practicing more and more as I get older is to think of the pros and cons, like you mentioned, and think about really like, what is the better choice for me? What do I really want? And then getting a little bit into my higher mind and thinking through like, yes, maybe I would like to be somewhere else this month to live, but is that really contributing to my greater goals? Is that going to serve me? Is there a better way to reach that? And sometimes I conclude, nope, want to go to Barcelona, want to get some sun. And other times I realize like, no, there's probably another way I could meet that need without having to make such an extreme move. And just basically using self-talk to talk through to myself about like, hey, actually this is what I want, I'm just feeling an impulse right now, and I don't need to make that drastic change at this point in order to meet that need. Let's find another way to do it. And sometimes that can be as simple as going out for a run in a new part of the city and listening to some new music. And it's like, okay, I feel like I've got a little of that stimulation. It'll at least hold me through the day, right? So don't forget to check out that life design approach training. I'll link to it in a card up here as well as below. And I'll also link to that human needs psychology video. It's about 30 minutes, so give yourself some time. You might want to do what I do and watch videos at like 1.25 or 1.5 speed, especially for kind of educational training videos like this. I find it's a lot easier to go through longer videos that way, so check that out as well. Catch you in the next video soon. I publish new videos every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday, so be sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell as well so you get notified. Talk to you soon.